Tycoon he brings Mistress to party. Plain ex-wife stuns with child and a billionaire husband. Meanwhile, across town, Laura was perched on the edge of a small, slightly worn sofa in her modest apartment. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers intertwining nervously as she stared at a faded photograph of her and Ethan. Her hair was neatly combed, her dress simple, yet her eyes, those eyes, carried the weight of sleepless nights, of sacrifices made for a love that was abandoned. She sighed, the sound heavy with the memories of laughter and whispered promises that had once filled the very walls of the home she shared with him. Her son, a small boy with Ethan's piercing eyes and the soft, chestnut hair she so carefully brushed every morning, tugged gently at her sleeve. "Mom, are you sure?" His voice trembled with both innocence and the instinctive sense of danger he had learned from the world. Laura bent down, her fingers brushing the soft strands of his hair. "I have to, darling. It's time they see who we really are. Time they see that even though they tried to erase us, we're still here, stronger than ever." Her voice quivered just slightly, betraying the storm of emotions she tried to mask. The night of the party arrived, and the grand estate glimmered under crystal chandeliers. Guests in gowns and tailored suits floated through the halls, glasses in hand, exchanging polite compliments and sharper whispers. Clarice floated beside Ethan, her laughter high and crystalline, as though it could carve through the thick tension that lingered unseen. Ethan's gaze swept across the room, confident, measuring, as if calculating who belonged in his world and who was just a shadow. And then she appeared. Laura stepped into the grand hall, her presence understated but impossible to ignore. She wore a simple dress, elegant without need of extravagance, and held her son's hand with quiet pride. The murmurs began almost immediately, eyes widening, whispers spreading like wildfire. A plain woman, they thought, unworthy of attention. Yet the serenity and dignity she carried like a shield made every lavish gown and ostentatious jewel around her seem faint and meaningless. Ethan froze, a sudden jolt ripping through him as he saw her. Time seemed to pause, the music softening in the back of his mind, the laughter turning distant. Clarice noticed too, her smile faltering, her grip on his arm tightening slightly. "Who is that?" she whispered, a hint of unease in her usually confident tone. "That's Laura," Ethan muttered, his jaw tightening. "My ex-wife." Laura's eyes met his for the first time in years, and a tide of emotion surged through the room, invisible to everyone else yet undeniable to him. She didn't rush to speak, didn't need to. The very fact that she had arrived, calm, composed, her son beside her, spoke louder than any words could. She had survived. She had thrived. She had become more than he ever allowed himself to imagine her being. Ethan's mind raced, each memory stabbing him sharper than the last. The nights he had laughed at her simplicity, the careless words that had pushed her out of his life, the betrayal he thought would be easy to forget. And now, here she was, living proof that he had underestimated everything that mattered. Laura's son tugged at her hand again, and she bent to whisper in his ear, "Stay close to me, sweetheart. Watch and learn, but never forget who you are." His small hand clenched around hers, strength and innocence wrapped in one fragile package. As they moved through the crowd, heads turned, conversations faltered, and Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had built an empire, surrounded himself with beauty and wealth. Yet in this simple moment, standing before the woman he once discarded, he realized that all his power could not shield him from the consequences of his choices. Laura paused near the center of the room, her son beside her, and glanced briefly at Ethan. There was no bitterness in her eyes, only a calm certainty that came from surviving heartbreak and building her life from nothing. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice steady yet soft, carrying the quiet strength that comes from pain transformed into power. Ethan's lips parted, and for the first time, he struggled for words. The smirk that usually adorned his face faltered, replaced by the faintest flicker of vulnerability. "Laura, She gave him a small, knowing smile, the kind that both comforts and warns, and turned her attention back to the guests, moving with grace and confidence. Ethan could barely recognize the world around him now. Everything felt smaller, meaningless, because in that room, it was her presence, and the life she had built, that overshadowed all he had achieved. And in that moment, he understood something terrifying and unavoidable. The plain woman he had discarded was no longer defined by his judgment. She was defined by herself, by the love she gave, by the child she raised, and by a resilience he had never fathomed. For the first time, Ethan saw the true cost of his arrogance. The story he thought he was writing, the one where he held all the power, was unraveling before his eyes. If you want, I can continue with topic 2 next, keeping the same emotional depth, dialogue, and immersive narrative style, building directly on this scene. Do you want me to continue with topic 2? Você discerto? Agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a história sem marcos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como seu faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoção. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT. Dice absolutely. Let's continue with topic 2. Fully narrated and emotionally immersive. Maintaining a linear timeline and deep inner feelings for the audience to experience. The night air carried a chill as Laura walked through the grand doorway, her son's small hand tightly in hers. The lights inside the mansion sparkled like stars fallen to earth, but none of it could dazzle her. She wasn't here to be impressed. She was here to confront the ghosts of a past that had hurt her deeply, to prove, silently but unmistakably, that she had survived, that she had become stronger. As the crowd of elegantly dressed guests mingled, the murmur of polite conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses created a background hum, but Laura barely noticed. Her focus was on Ethan, who now stood frozen in the center of the room, his eyes following her every movement. The arrogance in his posture remained, but there was a flicker of uncertainty there now, a crack in the armor he had always worn. Clarice, radiant in her designer gown, leaned slightly toward him, her voice a whisper that barely hid the edge of fear she didn't yet understand. Who is she? Her eyes darted to Laura, noting the simplicity of her dress, the calm dignity in her posture. She had expected a timid, defeated woman, but instead, Laura exuded quiet power. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he seemed unable to speak. She's my ex-wife, he said finally. His tone clipped, trying to mask the sudden rush of emotions he didn't know how to control. His mind raced, memories crashing against each other like waves against a cliff. Nights of laughter, of whispered promises, of small, unnoticed gestures that had once meant everything, gone, replaced by a hollow echo. Laura paused a few steps away, letting the murmurs of the guests wash over her. The society she had once feared now observed her with a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and admiration. Whispers floated through the air. She looks elegant, even simple. Who would have imagined? The same eyes that had dismissed her as plain now followed her every movement. She leaned down slightly toward her son and whispered, "Stay close, love. Remember who you are. Remember where we come from, and that nothing can take that away from us." He nodded, his small features a mirror of Ethan's own, but with Laura's warmth shining through. The resemblance was undeniable, and Laura could feel the collective gaze of the room settle on them. Ethan's pulse quickened, and a sense of unease slithered through him. He had carefully curated this evening to display power, wealth, and status, but Laura's presence disrupted the entire equilibrium. The laughter and polite chatter around them faded into background noise. She wasn't just here. She had arrived as a force, subtle but undeniable, commanding attention without trying, commanding respect without demanding it. Clarice, sensing the shift, tried to mask her unease with a nervous laugh. "Don't let her presence distract you," she whispered, gripping his arm more tightly than necessary. "She's just a memory." But the words rang hollow, even to her ears, as she watched Laura hold her son's hand with quiet confidence. as if daring the world to challenge her. Laura's gaze met Ethan's briefly, and in that instant, everything unspoken passed between them. There was no anger, no pleading, only a calm assertion of strength and dignity. Ethan's throat tightened. "Laura, what are you doing here?" His voice was lower than usual, a mix of disbelief and the first trace of regret he had ever felt in years. "I'm here to show that life doesn't stop when someone abandons you," she said softly, but with steel beneath the calm. "I've built something beautiful on my own, something you couldn't see when you were busy chasing your own illusions." Her eyes, steady and unwavering, reflected a pain transformed into quiet power. "And I brought him with me." Her son's small hand waved slightly, a gesture that made Ethan's heart skip in a way it hadn't in years. That innocent, simple act held more weight than all of the wealth, all of the titles, all of the luxuries he had surrounded himself with. For the first time, Ethan felt the hollow sting of what he had lost. The guests whispered behind delicate fans and crystal glasses, the shock in their voices betraying their fascination. Laura was not diminished by her simplicity. She was magnified by it. She carried herself with an elegance born of survival, of love, of quiet victories that no one had applauded before. The stark contrast between her and Clarice was almost cruelly obvious now. Clarice's beauty seemed fragile, dependent on the grandeur surrounding her, while Laura's radiance came from within, unstoppable and real. Ethan took a step closer, almost instinctively, but Laura didn't flinch. She didn't need to. She had already taken the power back that he had tried to strip from her years ago. He had left her with nothing but pride and determination, and she had turned it into a quiet triumph that no one could ignore. Do you even realize what you're doing?" Ethan asked, his voice strained, faltering between anger and awe. "Showing up here, like this, with him?" Laura's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "I realize exactly what I'm doing," she said. "I'm showing the world, and you, that I don't need your approval to exist, that I can create happiness, love, and respect without anyone's permission. And most importantly, that abandoning someone doesn't define them. It defines the person who walked away." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He had always believed he could control the narrative, that wealth and charm could rewrite the story of his life, but Laura's presence, and the life she carried forward without him, tore apart every illusion he had built. His heart pounded painfully, a mixture of longing and shame, and for the first time, he wondered if some losses were irreparable. Laura lifted her head, her gaze sweeping over the guests, and felt a quiet satisfaction as she saw the shift in perception. No one could underestimate her now. Every look, every murmur, every subtle glance affirmed what she had always known: dignity, love, and resilience outshine wealth, arrogance, and shallow charm. She held her son's hand a little tighter and whispered, "Come on, let's show them who we really are." Together, they moved through the crowd, unstoppable in their quiet power, leaving a roomful of shocked faces, including Ethan's, in their wake. And in that moment, a profound truth settled into Ethan's chest, heavy and undeniable. The world he had thought he controlled had changed. The plain woman he had abandoned was no longer a shadow. She was the center of the Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes narrowed, following Laura as she approached the center of the room. There was a quiet confidence in the way she carried herself, a magnetic pull that demanded attention without seeking it. His mind raced, a mixture of memories and regrets clashing violently. He could hear the faint echo of the past, the laughter, the quiet mornings, the promises that had slipped from his grasp. And now, standing before him, Laura held a quiet but undeniable power that he had never anticipated. Laura paused and bent slightly toward her son, whispering, "Remember, darling, people will stare. Let them. We're not here for their approval." The boy nodded solemnly, eyes wide but steady, gripping her hand as if drawing strength from her own calm. There was an innocence in him, yes, but also a wisdom beyond his years, a reflection of the struggles they had endured together. Ethan's pulse throbbed painfully. He wanted to speak, to reach out, to explain or maybe apologize. but the words seemed to vanish in the thick air of the room. Instead, all that came out was, "Laura, I didn't expect. I mean," his voice cracked, betraying a vulnerability he hadn't shown in years. The confident, untouchable Tycoon had disappeared in that moment, replaced by a man confronted with the living evidence of his past mistakes. Laura lifted her gaze, her eyes locking with his. There was no anger, no pleading, only clarity and calm power. "You underestimated what love and resilience could do," she said softly, yet every word carried weight. "I am not the same person you walked away from. I am stronger, happier, and I have a life that you cannot touch." Her tone was gentle but firm, a subtle blade that cut through the illusions he had built around himself. The guests murmured, some with admiration, others with surprise, as Laura held her head high. She was simple yet magnificent. She had survived betrayal and abandonment, and in doing so, she had become untouchable in a way Ethan had never imagined. Clarice shifted uneasily, her smile faltering for the first time that evening, sensing the undeniable truth that Laura's presence exposed no wealth, no charm, no borrowed glamour could ever replicate the substance of a life built on real strength. Laura's son tugged at her hand, breaking the spell that had immobilized Ethan. "Mom, they're looking at me," he said softly, a mixture of pride and confusion in his young voice. Laura crouched slightly, looking into his eyes. "Let them look," she whispered. "We're not here to perform. We're here to exist, to show that love, courage, and truth always shine brighter than lies and pretense." Her heart swelled with a quiet pride, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to pause, suspended on the delicate balance of her triumph and his disbelief. Ethan's chest tightened. He had believed that wealth and appearances could define everything. But in this room, with Laura and their son standing together, he felt the fragility of all he had built. The laughter, the admiration of the elite, the perfectly orchestrated evening. All of it seemed shallow, hollow, meaningless against the quiet, radiant truth that Laura embodied. Clarice tried again to mask her discomfort with a laugh, but it was brittle, forced, lacking conviction. You've changed," she said, a faint tremor in her voice, as if acknowledging a power she could neither challenge nor comprehend. Laura's lips curved slightly, a knowing, serene smile. "We all change, Clarice," she replied, her voice calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of authority. "Some of us evolve because life teaches us, others because they rely on illusions to feel whole." Her gaze swept over the crowd, subtly daring anyone to challenge her presence. The weight of her quiet dignity pressed down on the room, shifting every perception, rewriting every expectation. Ethan felt the sting of inadequacy, the sharp pang of regret. He had thought he could erase her, replace her with beauty and charm. But here she stood, alive, thriving, undeniable. And worse, he realized that the child before him, the living reminder of what he had abandoned, had already claimed a place in a world he no longer controlled. He stepped forward, but stopped mid-step. Each heartbeat echoed in his chest like a drum of warning. He wanted to demand, to reclaim, to assert his former dominance, but the words lodged in his throat. Laura's calm authority disarmed him completely. She had transcended the very dynamic he had relied on to define their relationship. Laura's gaze softened briefly as she looked at Ethan, a flicker of compassion behind the unwavering strength. "Ethan," she said gently, "you had your chance. You chose a path that didn't include me, and that's okay. We all make choices, but don't mistake absence for weakness." Her voice carried both closure and clarity, a message not just to him, but to everyone witnessing the unfolding moment. The boy squeezed her hand gently, as if understanding the magnitude of what his mother was conveying. "Mom, what now?" he asked quietly, his voice small but steady. Laura smiled, her chest lifting with quiet triumph. "Now we live," she said simply. "Now we show the world that love and truth endure, that happiness isn't given. It's built, nurtured, and protected." She led him further into the center of the room, moving with a grace that was both gentle and commanding, leaving Ethan staring, lost in a storm of what-ifs and memories he could never reclaim. The room buzzed with a new energy, an invisible shift that neither wealth nor status could conceal. Laura had arrived, not to confront with anger, not to demand vengeance, but to demonstrate that she had flourished in spite of abandonment. Her presence radiated an undeniable power that silenced judgment, turned gossip into admiration, and left everyone, including Ethan, suspended between awe and regret. Clarissa's eyes followed Laura, wide with an uneasy realization. Ethan, she brought him, she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. The child, he looks like you. He's exactly like you. Her words were almost a plea, a desperate attempt to anchor Ethan to the reality she thought they controlled. But even she knew her grasp was slipping. Ethan swallowed, his mind a chaotic storm of past and present. Every memory collided with the sight of the boy, innocent, curious, untainted, yet unmistakably his own. His voice was low, almost hoarse, when he finally spoke. Laura, I didn't know you would. He stopped, realizing that words were useless against the quiet, commanding truth before him. Laura's eyes softened just slightly, and she bent to meet her son's gaze before turning back to Ethan. I thought it was time for you to see, she said quietly, yet each syllable carried a weight that seemed to settle over the room. Time for you to understand that life goes on, and sometimes the best revenge is living well. The boy looked up at Ethan, eyes wide, unaware of the full complexity of the emotions swirling around him, but sensing the tension, the weight of history in the silence. Daddy, he asked, curiosity lacing the question, but it sounded alien in the gilded room, like a key turning in a lock that hadn't been used in years. Ethan froze, his heart lurching. He had never been prepared for this, never anticipated that the life he had walked away from would rise like this, vibrant and undeniable. He's my son, he whispered, almost to himself, as the reality sank in with crushing force. Laura stepped a little closer, her voice firm yet calm. Yes, he is, and he's everything I fought to protect, everything I fought to raise. He is the proof that love isn't about wealth or status or appearances. It's about what survives when you're abandoned. Her words echoed in the silent spaces of the room, carrying both truth and challenge. Clarissa's face paled as she realized the full magnitude of Laura's presence. You can't just be here like this, she said, voice shaky, desperate. Ethan, you have to. We can't let this. Ethan's gaze locked on Laura, and something unfamiliar flickered in his eyes. Regret, longing, shame. Laura, I never imagined. His words faltered, the weight of years of choices pressing down on him. I thought it was what I needed. Laura's lips curved in a faint, serene smile, but her eyes remained sharp, reflecting the storms she had endured. You thought leaving me and our son would make your life better, but it didn't. You were wrong. And that's not bitterness speaking, it's clarity. I have built my life without you. I am not broken because you left. I am stronger because I chose to live, to protect what mattered. Her son tugged gently at her dress, reminding her of his small, steady heartbeat beside her. Mom, are they going to be okay? He asked softly, sensing the tension between the adults but not fully understanding it. Laura bent down and smiled at him, brushing a soft strand of hair from his forehead. We will be okay, sweetheart. We always are. What's important is that we know our worth, that we stand tall, and that we never let anyone diminish us again. She straightened, letting her gaze sweep across the room, settling briefly on Ethan. And as for them, she added softly but firmly, they will have to see that the past doesn't define us. We define ourselves. The room seemed to hold its breath. Guests whispered quietly, glances darting between the radiant simplicity of Laura and the stunned, tense expressions of Ethan and Clarisse. For the first time that night, it was clear that appearances, wealth, and influence could not outshine the quiet power of resilience, of love protected, and of a life forged through courage and determination. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides, his pride warring with the recognition of his failure. "Laura, I should have never," his voice caught, choking on words that could not undo the years, the absence, the choices that had left him staring at what he had lost. Laura's eyes softened, a flicker of compassion breaking through the hard edges of her strength. "Ethan, this isn't about punishment. It's about truth. I am here, we are here, and you will have to live with that reality. I am not here to humiliate you. I am here to live my life fully, without regrets. That is the power you walked away from." Clarice's face fell, the thin veil of control slipping completely. She tried once more to speak, but her voice lacked conviction, carrying only the tremor of fear. "Ethan, No," Ethan said sharply, cutting her off, his gaze fixed on Laura, a storm of feelings evident in his expression. This is between us." He turned slightly, the conflict in him raging quietly, the realization of what he had lost and what he had taken for granted crashing down like a tide. Laura nodded slightly, the calm in her eyes unshakable. "It always was, Ethan, and now, finally, it can be clear to everyone." She reached for her son's hand again, holding it firmly, a simple gesture that carried the weight of her triumph. For a moment, silence reigned, heavy and charged. Ethan could feel the crowd's eyes, could feel the subtle shift in energy around him, but most painfully, he felt the undeniable truth staring him down. Laura was no longer the woman he left behind. She was the center of her own world, radiant, unstoppable, and whole, and the child by her side was the living proof of what he had abandoned. And as the soft light of the chandeliers shimmered over her and her son, the faintest flicker of awe crossed Ethan's face. He had thought he controlled the narrative of his life, but Laura had rewritten it quietly, elegantly, and with devastating power. He could no longer claim dominion over the past, and for the first time, he truly understood the meaning of absence, resilience, and the profound impact of a life lived with courage and heart. Laura's gaze met his, unwavering, and in that silent connection, a storm of past emotions erupted. The memories of laughter, late-night talks, and small, unnoticed gestures collided with the stark reality of betrayal and abandonment. Her posture was calm, but the intensity in her eyes betrayed a lifetime of pain transformed into unshakable strength. "You came here to show off, didn't you?" Ethan's voice was low, trembling slightly with the first hint of desperation he had ever allowed himself to feel in her presence. "To flaunt your life, to remind me of what I've lost." Laura's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. "Not to remind you, Ethan, to show myself, to show everyone that leaving someone does not erase them, and it does not give you power over their happiness." Her voice was soft but sharp, a quiet arrow aimed straight at the hubris he had built around himself. Ethan's eyes flicked toward their son, who stood close to Laura, clutching her hand with the steady courage of youth. The boy's innocent gaze, curious yet observant, struck Ethan more sharply than any verbal confrontation could. He's mine," Ethan whispered, almost to himself, as the realization hit him like a sudden storm. I should have been here." Laura's expression softened just slightly, a flicker of compassion passing through the fierce lines of her determination. "You weren't, Ethan, and that choice shaped our lives. But I made sure we survived. I made sure he grew up in a home full of love, not neglect. I chose to be a mother, a protector, a woman who doesn't crumble under someone else's arrogance." Clarice stepped forward, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and indignation. "Laura, you can't walk in here and—" "No, Clarice," Laura interrupted, her tone calm but firm, each word deliberate, cutting through the tension like a knife. "I am not here to compete with you. I am not here to argue. I am here to exist in the fullness of my life, which you cannot touch, no matter how much you try to step into a story you have no part of." The room held its breath. The chandelier lights reflected off the polished floor, catching the subtle glint of Laura's eyes as she stood tall, unshakable. Ethan's chest tightened, a rush of regret and longing threatening to break through the carefully constructed walls of his ego. He wanted to speak, to reach out, to reclaim what he thought was his, but the words failed him. Laura crouched slightly, gathering her son closer to her, and whispered to him softly, "It's okay, sweetheart. Remember, strength is quiet. Courage doesn't always shout. It holds steady, even when the world doubts you." The boy nodded, eyes wide and unwavering, sensing the gravity of the moment, even if he didn't fully understand it. Ethan's voice finally found purchase, low and raw with emotion. "Laura, I didn't realize. I thought leaving would make things easier. I thought I was doing the right thing." His chest rose and fell rapidly, his pride crumbling as he confronted the undeniable reality of his loss. Laura shook her head gently, a mixture of sorrow and strength in her movement. "You thought of yourself, Ethan. That was the choice you made. And now you see what it cost you. I am not bitter. I am clear. I am whole. I have everything that matters right here," she said, pressing a gentle hand against her son's chest. "Love, family, resilience. These are not things you can buy. These are things you earn. And I earned them without you." Clarissa's hands trembled at her sides, her facade of control slipping entirely. She had entered the evening confident, radiant, certain of her influence over Ethan and the world around her. But the quiet, undeniable force of Laura's presence made her fragile, exposed, and utterly insignificant in comparison. Ethan swallowed, his throat tight, his mind racing through years of regret. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way," he admitted, his voice barely audible, a confession he had never allowed himself to voice. "I didn't know how much I was losing. Until now." Laura's gaze softened again, her tone gentle but unwavering. "And now you do. That's the truth you must live with. I am not here to punish you, Ethan. I am here to live, and to show that even when someone leaves, even when life seems unfair, we can rise. We can create joy, security, and love from the fragments of what we once thought lost." Her son tugged slightly at her hand, drawing her attention to his small, earnest face. "Mom, are they going to be okay?" he asked innocently, sensing the tension without fully understanding it. Laura smiled faintly, brushing a soft strand of hair from his forehead. "We will be more than okay, my love," she whispered. "We will be stronger, and nothing, not wealth, not charm, not arrogance, will ever take that from us." Ethan stood frozen, each word sinking into him like stones, heavy and irreversible. He had imagined confrontations, arguments, even attempts at reconciliation. But this, the quiet, composed, undeniable victory of Laura, was something he could never have anticipated. She had risen above the past, and in doing so, had left him staring at a truth he could not alter. The guests whispered, murmuring in awe as they witnessed the exchange. The dynamic of the evening had shifted entirely. Laura's calm authority, her unwavering dignity, and the undeniable presence of her son reshaped every perception. Ethan realized that no amount of wealth, no display of charm, no social maneuvering could compete with the quiet, radiant strength she had cultivated in his absence. Clarissa's face fell as she realized the futility of her presence. She had thought she held power through proximity, through influence, through being chosen by Ethan, but Laura's power was not derived from his choices. It existed independently, built on love, resilience, and survival. She had arrived not to prove herself to him, but to show the world and herself that she was unshakable. Ethan's hands hung at his sides, trembling slightly as he tried to reconcile the image before him with the man he had once been. "Laura, you don't need to speak," Laura said softly, cutting him off with gentle finality. "The truth is here, visible. What I have, what we have, it is not yours to question. You cannot take it back. You cannot erase it. You cannot diminish it. And that is the power of truth, Ethan. That is the life you walked away from, and the one you will never regain." The room seemed to hum with the quiet intensity of her words, the guests captivated, some in awe, some in disbelief, as Laura held her son's hand firmly and stood taller than ever before. Ethan felt a shiver run through him, the first real awareness of his own fragility, the first true realization that power without heart is meaningless. And in that suspended moment, Laura's eyes swept over him one last time, calm, steady, and filled with unspoken understanding. She had arrived to show the world, and him, that some truths could never be ignored, and some victories were quiet, invisible, and yet utterly irresistible. Laura bent slightly, gathering her son close, and whispered in his ear, "Stay calm, darling. Watch, but do not be afraid. The world may stare, but we control how it sees us." The boy nodded solemnly, his small hand gripping hers like a lifeline. There was an understanding there, born not of years but of survival, that she had instilled in him. Ethan's voice, tight and strained, cut through the room, breaking the silence. "Laura, why now? Why bring him here tonight?" There was confusion, desperation, and the first flicker of fear in his eyes. For a moment, the self-assured Tycoon was gone, replaced by a man confronted with consequences he could no longer escape. Laura met his gaze steadily, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, serene yet daring. "Why tonight, Ethan? Because it's the perfect moment. The perfect moment to see that life does not pause for anyone's ego, that happiness, love, and dignity are not yours to control, that some things grow stronger when they are left to flourish freely." Clarice stiffened, stepping slightly in front of him as if to shield her fragile grasp on the evening's illusion of control. "Laura, this isn't necessary. You don't need to. You can leave. Ethan and I—" Her voice faltered under Laura's unshakable calm. Laura's eyes flicked toward her, a quiet storm behind her serenity. "Necessary perhaps not, but enlightening absolutely. You see, Clarice, some lessons are best observed rather than explained. Tonight, the world, and you, will witness the reality of what strength looks like." Ethan's fists clenched, the room feeling as though it had shrunk around him. You're trying to humiliate me?" he muttered, a mixture of hurt and disbelief threading his voice. "Is that it, to prove some point to these people?" Laura shook her head gently, her smile softening, but her words struck like steel. "Humiliation, no, Ethan. This is not about punishment. This is about truth. The truth is, I am not here to seek approval from anyone. Not you, not them, not anyone. I am here to live, to show that abandonment cannot erase a life that refuses to be erased, that love and courage survive when cruelty and arrogance fail." Her son looked up at her, eyes wide and innocent, and she bent to whisper, "See, some people may try to rewrite our story, but the truth is ours, always ours." The crowd had fallen silent, the whispers replaced by the tangible tension of realization. Ethan felt the weight of their gaze upon him, but it was Laura, standing calm and radiant, who held the room in her quiet, unshakable power. Every gesture she made, every glance she cast toward the boy, reinforced her triumph, not with loud declarations, but with the undeniable presence of a life rebuilt and thriving. Clarice's voice trembled again, small and almost desperate. "Ethan, we should go. She's showing off. We can't." Ethan shook his head, his eyes locked on Laura, helpless in the face of the undeniable truth she carried. I can't take it back," he admitted, voice breaking, his pride crumbling as he struggled to process the reality that the woman he had abandoned was no longer defined by him. "I didn't know. I didn't realize until now." Laura took a slow, deliberate step forward, her son following close behind, and the room seemed to still further in anticipation. "You didn't realize because you never cared to," she said softly, yet with the resonance of a bell-tolling truth. "You thought absence could erase our lives, but it doesn't, cannot. And tonight you see that, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet, undeniable triumph." Ethan's hands shook slightly at his sides, and Clarice's posture faltered entirely. Guests were leaning subtly, eyes darting between the trio in awe, tension crackling like electricity in the air. For the first time, Ethan saw the magnitude of what he had lost. The son who bore his eyes, the woman who had risen unshakably from his abandonment, and the quiet, unyielding strength that demanded recognition. Laura knelt slightly, lifting her son in her arms, and whispered, "This is our life, Ethan, our story, and you are an observer now, not a participant. Remember that." He swallowed hard, the room seeming impossibly large, the chandeliers glinting like distant stars he could no longer reach. His voice was barely audible, rough with the weight of regret. "Laura, I wish." She held up a hand, gentle yet commanding, stopping him before he could finish. "Wishes do not undo choices, Ethan. Actions do. But the actions you once took shaped this reality. I cannot change what you did, only what I do next." The guests leaned in unconsciously, sensing the shift in power. Laura's presence radiated calm authority, her gaze unwavering, her strength undeniable. Every whisper of admiration, every cautious glance, reinforced the truth that she was unshakable. She had transformed loss into victory, heartbreak into resilience, and abandonment into a life brimming with love and dignity. Ethan's eyes flickered with the first trace of real fear he had felt in years, a fear of facing the life he had chosen to abandon, of facing the evidence of his mistakes in the form of a son and a woman who refused to be diminished. Clarice's beauty and charm seemed fragile, hollow, and entirely insufficient compared to the quiet, luminous strength Laura embodied. Laura took a step back, her gaze sweeping the room, and whispered to her son, "Stand tall, my love. Watch carefully. Some lessons cannot be spoken, only witnessed." The boy straightened, eyes steady, and Ethan felt a pang he could not name. Pride, longing, loss, regret, all tangled into one sharp, unrelenting ache. Laura's quiet triumph was a storm he could not escape, a truth he could not deny, and a revelation that the life he had thought he controlled had slipped entirely beyond his reach. For a long moment, they stood like that, a small trio in the midst of a glittering room, tension thick as velvet, the air charged with emotion, suspense, and the undeniable weight of what was to come. The room, once a stage for Ethan's power, had become a theater for Laura's quiet, unyielding victory, and everyone, including him, felt it, deep, undeniable, irreversible. Clarice leaned closer, her voice trembling as she tried to anchor him to the reality she believed they still controlled. "Ethan, she's just showing off. Don't let her make you. You can't let her." Her words trailed off, because even she could feel the futility in trying to manipulate the situation. Ethan shook his head, his eyes fixed on Laura. "No, this isn't just showing off," he muttered, voice tight. She's reminding me." The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. All those years of absence, all the choices he had made, now confronted him not as anger or bitterness, but as undeniable proof of her strength and of the life he had abandoned. Laura's gaze swept the room, calm and composed, yet piercingly direct when it landed on Ethan. "I'm not here to punish you," she said softly, each word deliberate, echoing in the tense silence. "I'm here to exist, to show the truth, and to remind you that life continues, whether you participate or not." And this, she gestured toward their son, who stood confidently by her side, radiant and alive. "This is the consequence of choices, of absence, of what happens when one refuses to surrender to despair." Ethan's throat tightened. His son's eyes mirrored his own, innocent yet full of quiet defiance, unknowing yet fully aware that he had a life built on love and resilience without his father's presence. The boy smiled faintly at Laura, a gesture that seemed to illuminate the entire room, making Ethan feel both awe and sharp, unrelenting regret. Clarice's voice rose again, trembling and thin. "Laura, this isn't right. You can't. This is public. It's humiliating." Laura cut her off gently but firmly, her calm authority filling the space. "Clarice, the only thing here that is humiliating is misunderstanding what true strength looks like. It's not flashy. It's not loud. It's not dependent on charm or wealth. It's quiet, enduring, and undeniable. And yes, tonight it is very visible, because life cannot be hidden or denied when it's lived fully and authentically." The guests leaned in subtly, catching every word, every gesture. Whispers rippled through the room, some in admiration, some in shock, but all carrying the weight of realization. Laura was not just surviving, she was thriving. She had transformed abandonment and heartbreak into a life of dignity. Proof that strength came not from power or influence, but from resilience and love. Ethan stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly, as though he could grasp the fragments of control he thought he still had. Laura, His voice faltered, emotions churning too fiercely to be contained. I don't know what to say. I thought leaving would make things easier for everyone. I didn't know. I didn't realize. Laura's eyes softened just slightly, the edge of steel tempered by the faintest trace of compassion. You didn't realize, Ethan, because you never had to. You left, thinking it was the right choice for yourself. And yes, it shaped both our lives, but you cannot change what was lost. You can only see it, learn from it, and witness the life that emerged despite your absence. Her son tugged gently at her hand, and she knelt slightly to his height, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. See, sweetheart, life continues, and sometimes the quietest victories are the most powerful. The boy nodded solemnly, eyes bright with understanding beyond his years, absorbing the gravity of the moment even in his innocence. Ethan's chest ached, every heartbeat echoing the bitter truth that he had been absent from the very life he helped create. He could feel the judgment, curiosity, and awe of the guests pressing in, but the force of Laura's calm authority and undeniable presence left him exposed, raw, and trembling in ways he hadn't experienced in years. Laura straightened, her gaze sweeping across the room, subtly daring anyone to challenge the calm power she radiated. Life does not wait for the indecisive or the arrogant, she said softly, yet her words resonated through the room like a bell tolling truth. It continues for those who rise, who endure, and who love. That is what you see tonight, Ethan. The life you walked away from, the strength you failed to recognize, and the undeniable truth of what resilience can achieve. Ethan swallowed hard, his jaw tight, chest rising and falling rapidly. Every attempt at pride and control crumbled in the face of Laura's quiet triumph. She had transformed pain into power, absence into undeniable presence, and heartbreak into an elegant, unstoppable life. His mind raced through memories, regrets, and what-ifs, yet no thought could erase the reality before him. Laura was whole, radiant, and thriving, and he was powerless to touch it. Clarice's hands trembled at her sides, and for the first time, her beauty and charm seemed fragile, hollow, insignificant against the quiet, commanding presence of Laura and the living proof of her strength, their son. Ethan felt a pang of helplessness he couldn't ignore. He had thought himself untouchable, the architect of his life and desires. Now he was a spectator, confronted with the undeniable, radiant truth of what he had abandoned. Laura took a slow step back, the boy following close, and whispered softly to him, "Stand tall, watch carefully. Some truths cannot be spoken. They must be witnessed." Her calm authority filled the room, a gentle yet unbreakable force that no wealth, charm, or arrogance could ever overshadow. Ethan's gaze stayed fixed on them, a storm of longing, regret, and awe swirling behind his eyes. He realized, painfully and irrevocably, that the life he thought he controlled had evolved without him. Laura had claimed it, nurtured it, and illuminated it with a strength that left him exposed, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. And in that charged silence, as the guests whispered in awe and anticipation, the first tremors of a reckoning began to settle in Ethan's chest. He had glimpsed the full weight of absence, the power of resilience, and the profound impact of a life forged without compromise. Laura was no longer a shadow of the past. She was a luminous, unstoppable force, and he, for the first time in years, had no choice but to watch. Clarice's fingers clenched around her champagne glass, knuckles white, her voice trembling despite her attempt at composure. "Ethan, she can't just stand there like that, showing off in front of everyone. We have to do something." Her words trailed off under the weight of Laura's calm, magnetic authority. She had underestimated the quiet strength that no display of wealth or charm could overshadow. Ethan's chest tightened. He felt the first real pangs of fear and helplessness in years, the unmistakable feeling of being out of control. "Clarice, I can't." His voice cracked, and for the first time, he realized that the power he had once wielded so effortlessly meant nothing here. He couldn't buy respect, charm his way back, or manipulate the scene. All he could do was watch as Laura asserted a force he could no longer contest. Laura's gaze swept over the crowd, calm, deliberate, each movement measured yet full of subtle authority. She stepped forward slightly, allowing the chandelier's soft light to catch her profile, illuminating the gentle determination etched into her expression. Her son mirrored her movements, small and composed, exuding a quiet courage that left Ethan trembling inside. "Ladies and gentlemen," Laura began, her voice soft yet carrying effortlessly across the room. The murmurs ceased instantly, everyone leaning forward unconsciously, sensing the gravity in her words. Life often teaches us lessons in ways we do not anticipate. Sometimes through absence, sometimes through hardship, and sometimes through choices we cannot control. Her eyes briefly met Ethan's, steady and unyielding, yet not filled with anger, only clarity. "Tonight, you see one such lesson. You see a life that endured, a love that remains steadfast, and a child who embodies hope, resilience, and courage." Ethan's pulse raced, each word cut through the carefully constructed illusions of the past. He wanted to argue, to assert control, but he was paralyzed by the undeniable truth in her voice and posture. He had never faced her like this before, not as a woman who had survived abandonment, not as a mother who had protected her son, not as a radiant force that demanded recognition without a word of anger or accusation. Clarice's lips parted, pale and trembling. "Laura, you don't need to. This isn't necessary." Her voice broke under the weight of Laura's presence. The room had already shifted. Every glance was now measured, every whisper carrying the unspoken acknowledgement that Laura had become the center of attention not through spectacle, but through the raw, undeniable power of integrity and resilience. Laura's gaze softened only slightly, and she crouched to meet her son's eyes. "Stand tall," she whispered to him. "Remember, strength is quiet, but it is unstoppable." The boy nodded, his small hand gripping hers tightly, a visible manifestation of the life she had built in the face of betrayal. He embodied the love, patience, and courage she had nurtured, a living reminder of her triumph over abandonment. Ethan's jaw tightened, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He could feel the weight of the crowd, the weight of his own failures, pressing down on him. The life he had tried to escape, the family he had left behind, was now thriving in a way he could no longer influence or control. Laura had transformed absence and heartbreak into a presence that left him powerless, humbled, and painfully aware of his losses. Laura straightened, her gaze sweeping the room once more. "Tonight is not about judgment or revenge," she continued, her voice calm yet piercing. "It is about truth, about showing that life moves forward, that happiness cannot be bought, that love cannot be broken when it is nurtured with integrity and courage. And that is what you are witnessing, a life that was never diminished, a love that was never erased, and a strength that cannot be challenged by arrogance or wealth." The crowd whispered, leaning in closer, some with admiration, some with incredulity. Clarice shifted uneasily beside Ethan, realizing that the delicate web of influence she had relied on was crumbling, thread by thread. Laura had not sought confrontation, but her quiet authority and unwavering presence were dismantling the illusion of control Ethan and Clarice had believed they held. Ethan's hands trembled at his sides, and for the first time, he felt the raw sting of regret, the unshakable awareness that he had been absent from a life that deserved his care, his presence, and his love. His son's eyes, innocent yet filled with understanding, bore into him, reminding him of the life he had abandoned, the consequences of his choices, and the unstoppable reality of Laura's triumph. Laura took a step closer, her son following in perfect synchrony. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of experience and quiet authority. "You will have to see this, witness it, and live with it. You cannot take it back, you cannot change it. But you can respect it. That is all I ask. Respect for the life I have built, for the love I have nurtured, for the courage I have protected." Ethan's chest tightened further. Every attempt to speak faltered. Every instinct to reclaim control vanished. He could see the guest's eyes upon him, but it was Laura's calm, radiant authority that rendered him powerless. The room had shifted entirely. He was no longer the center, no longer the arbiter of perception or status. He was forced to watch, to feel, and to confront the truth of the life he had walked away from. Laura's son tugged gently at her hand, and she whispered softly, "Come, darling. Let's show them how quietly unstoppable life can be." They moved with a serene, measured grace toward the center of the room, leaving Ethan rooted, vulnerable, and trembling with the sharp, unrelenting sting of what he had lost. The guests' whispers grew, a low hum of awe, realization, and admiration. Laura's quiet triumph, her unwavering presence, and the living proof of her resilience. Their son illuminated the room in a way that no wealth, no charm, no social maneuvering could rival. Ethan understood, fully and irrevocably, that the life he had abandoned had flourished without him, that Laura had reclaimed her power, and that he was powerless to alter the truth he now faced. The room seemed suspended, heavy with tension, emotion, and anticipation. Ethan's gaze never left Laura and the boy, and for the first time, he experienced a profound, crushing vulnerability. Every whispered acknowledgement, every admiring glance from the crowd, reinforced the reality that Laura had emerged from heartbreak stronger, more radiant, and unstoppable. And in that charged silence, the first true tremors of humility, regret, and awe began to take hold in Ethan's heart. He had seen strength, resilience, and love embodied in a woman who refused to be diminished, and he was powerless to challenge it. The realization settled over him like a tide. Laura's triumph was complete, quiet, and undeniable. Laura took a step closer to him, her son following quietly, his small hand gripping hers like a lifeline. "Ethan," she said softly, yet her voice carried through the room with clarity, "we need to speak, not for them, not for appearances, but for the truth that cannot be ignored." Ethan swallowed, his throat dry, the words caught somewhere between fear, guilt, and pride. "Laura, I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice hoarse. The years of absence pressed on him like a weight he could no longer ignore. "I thought I was doing what was best. I thought leaving. I thought I needed to." Laura held up a hand to stop him, her eyes steady and calm, radiating authority. "You thought for yourself, Ethan. That is true. And those choices shaped our lives, not yours alone. But now the truth is here. You see it, you witness it, and you cannot undo it. You will have to accept it." Ethan's fists clenched, the sharp ache of regret slicing through his chest. I didn't understand how much I was losing. Until now." His voice broke, exposing a vulnerability he had buried for years beneath charm and arrogance. Seeing her, it's like a punch I can't catch. Laura's gaze softened just slightly as she glanced at their son, then back to Ethan. "It's not a punch, Ethan. It's a reflection, a reminder that life continues, that love endures, and that absence does not diminish what is nurtured with courage and heart. He is ours, and he has grown in strength and kindness without you. That is something you cannot take back." Clarice, pale and trembling, stepped closer, her voice shaky. "Ethan, we can't let her do this in front of everyone. It's..." Laura's calm authority cut through her words like steel. "Clarice, it is not about you or about control or appearances. It is about truth. And the truth cannot be hidden, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be undone." Her gaze returned to Ethan, steady and unwavering. "You walked away. You left, and the life you abandoned has flourished because it had to. Because I refused to let it wither. Refuse to let absence define it. Refuse to let heartbreak diminish it. Ethan's chest heaved, the weight of realization pressing down. Laura, I wish I could. His words faltered, broken by emotion he could not contain. I wish I could take it back, or fix it, but I know I can't. Laura took a step closer, her presence commanding yet calm, her son following in quiet synchrony. No, Ethan, you cannot take it back. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can witness the truth, and you can respect what we have built. That is the only choice you have left. Ethan's eyes flicked to their son, who looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and quiet confidence. The boy's innocence and courage struck him deeper than any confrontation could. He's amazing, Ethan whispered, voice barely audible. I missed so much. Laura nodded, her eyes glinting with a calm determination. Yes, he is, and he has grown in love, in kindness, and in courage because we chose to endure and thrive. You were absent, Ethan, but we lived, we built, and we loved anyway. That is something you cannot undo, and now you must face it. The crowd leaned in, sensing the gravity of the confrontation. Every whisper, every glance, every subtle murmur carried the weight of truth. Laura's quiet authority and unwavering presence had transformed the evening into a demonstration of resilience and triumph over abandonment. Ethan's pride, his carefully constructed image, and even Clarice's fragile influence could not compete with the undeniable power of her calm, steady dignity. Ethan's hands shook at his sides. Laura, I can't believe how strong you are, how incredible you've become. And him, his voice faltered, caught between awe, regret, and longing. I never imagined. Not like this. Laura's gaze softened, a trace of warmth breaking through the steel of her resolve. You never imagined because you were never here. We lived, Ethan. We endured. We thrived. And now you see what you walked away from. You see it clearly, fully, and irrevocably. The boy tugged gently at her hand, drawing Laura's attention, and she whispered softly, Remember, my love, strength is quiet. Courage doesn't always roar. It stands steady, unwavering, no matter the storm. The boy nodded, small and composed, a living testament to everything Laura had nurtured and protected in the years of Ethan's absence. Ethan's chest tightened as he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. He had imagined confrontations, arguments, and attempts at reconciliation. But this quiet, undeniable triumph of Laura was something he could never have prepared for. She had risen above heartbreak, transformed absence into presence, and abandonment into resilience. He was powerless, exposed, and painfully aware of the life he had abandoned and the woman who had claimed it with quiet, luminous authority. Clarice, beside him, shivered under the weight of Laura's quiet dominance. Her attempts at influence, her charm, and her proximity to Ethan felt suddenly hollow and meaningless. Laura's life, her son's presence, and the quiet radiance of their bond had created an unshakable reality that no artifice could challenge. Laura straightened, taking a step back, the boy following, and addressed the room in a tone that was calm but carried the full force of authority. Tonight, you witnessed the truth. You see a life that endured, a love that never faltered, and a strength that cannot be diminished by absence, arrogance, or wealth. Respect it, witness it, and understand that some victories are quiet, invisible, and yet utterly undeniable. Ethan's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He had thought he controlled the narrative of his life, but the reality now was undeniable. Laura had rewritten it with elegance, resilience, and quiet power. He was forced to watch, to feel, and to accept the truth of what he had lost. The crowd leaned in, silent and captivated, as Laura held her son's hand, radiating a calm strength that overshadowed the gilded opulence of the room. Ethan stood frozen, trembling with a mix of awe, regret, and longing, fully aware that the life he abandoned had not only survived but thrived, and he had no power to reclaim it. Groan, an undercurrent of awe and anticipation rippling through the crowd. Ethan's chest tightened with every movement she made. He had spent years imagining confrontations, arguments, and excuses to reclaim his place, but none of them prepared him for this quiet authority, calm resilience, and a presence that rendered him powerless. Laura's eyes swept the room slowly, deliberately, as if cataloging every glance, every expression, every whispered speculation. "Life teaches lessons in ways we cannot anticipate," she said softly, but her voice carried across the polished floors with the subtle force of inevitability. "It teaches them through absence, through pain, through choices we do not understand at the time. But the truth remains, enduring and unshakable." Her gaze met Ethan's, unwavering and serene. "The truth, Ethan, is that love, courage, and strength do not need permission to exist. They cannot be stolen or diminished by arrogance or wealth." Ethan felt a pang in his chest, a mix of awe and regret. He had believed that charm and status could fix anything, that wealth could mask the absence of heart. But now, watching Laura move with quiet grace, standing with a child who embodied resilience and love, he realized how hollow his assumptions had been. His voice trembled, barely audible. "Laura, I didn't know. I didn't understand what it meant to leave, to..." Laura held up a hand, calm but commanding. "You didn't understand, Ethan, because you never had to. You left and we lived. You abandoned and we endured. You walked away and we thrived. That is the reality you now face, and the one you cannot alter." She crouched slightly to her son's height, brushing a gentle strand of hair from his forehead. "Stand tall, my love. Watch closely. Some truths must be seen, not told." The boy's eyes mirrored his mother's calm resolve, and Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He had imagined raising him, teaching him, guiding him, but he had been absent. And now, he was confronted with the living proof of everything he had missed: a child strong, radiant, and full of quiet authority instilled by a mother who refused to be diminished. Clarice stepped forward, voice quivering. "Ethan, we can't just let her. This isn't appropriate. She's..." Laura's calm authority cut through the tremor in Clarice's tone. "This isn't about appropriateness. This isn't about appearances or charm or influence. This is about truth. And truth does not bend for convenience, nor does it falter before arrogance. It exists, independent, radiant, undeniable. And tonight, it is here for all to see." The room grew still, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Ethan's chest rose and fell rapidly, his mind a storm of regret, longing, and fear. "Laura, I wish I could take it back, but I know I can't." His voice broke, raw and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the composed figure standing before him. Laura's gaze softened slightly, though her authority remained unbroken. "You cannot take it back, Ethan. You cannot rewrite the past. But you can witness it, respect it, and perhaps learn from it. That is all I ask." She straightened, turning her gaze outward to the room once more, her son by her side, small yet formidable in his presence. "Tonight," she continued, voice steady and clear, "you all witness resilience. You witness love that endured, courage that never faltered, and a life rebuilt despite abandonment. Some lessons are not taught through words, they are demonstrated through living, breathing proof. And that is what you see here." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, his chest tight, his pride crumbling under the weight of undeniable truth. He had imagined confrontations and negotiations, imagined charm and wealth could restore him to his place, but Laura's presence rendered all of it meaningless. He was exposed, vulnerable, and painfully aware of the life he had abandoned. The boy tugged gently at Laura's hand, and she whispered, "Watch carefully. Strength does not shout. Courage does not demand recognition. But life lived fully, love nurtured fiercely, and resilience built patiently. These cannot be ignored." Ethan's eyes fixed on them, and he realized the extent of what he had lost. He had walked away, thinking absence would erase him from their lives. But instead, Laura had grown, and their son had grown, and together they had built something radiant, unstoppable, and undeniable. The room, once his stage, was now hers. A theater of quiet triumph that neither wealth nor charm could overshadow. Laura's gaze returned to Ethan, soft yet unflinching. Ethan, see clearly, witness fully, understand that life continues, that love endures, and that absence cannot erase what is nurtured with integrity and courage. This is not humiliation. This is truth, and you must accept it. Ethan's voice barely emerged from his throat, trembling with emotion. Laura, I didn't know strength could be like this. I never imagined. Laura nodded once, gently, with the calm satisfaction of someone who has endured and conquered silently. It is quiet, Ethan. It does not rely on spectacle or dominance. It exists because it is real, because it is nurtured, because it survives. You see it now, fully, undeniably, and that is enough. The crowd remained silent, captivated by the quiet, intense energy between them. Ethan realized painfully that his life, his ego, his charm, all of it was irrelevant here. Laura had claimed the evening, the attention, and the undeniable truth. He could only watch, powerless, and witness the victory she had quietly won. And in that charged, heavy silence, Ethan understood fully the magnitude of his loss. The life he had abandoned was vibrant, whole, and radiant, because she had nurtured it, protected it, and refused to let absence or betrayal diminish it. He was forced to accept, to feel, and to witness the truth of her triumph, leaving him exposed, humbled, and utterly powerless. Laura took a deliberate step forward, her gaze unwavering. Her son mirrored her, small but undeniably confident, a living testament to the years she had endured and the love she had nurtured. "Ethan," she said softly, yet each word resonated across the room. "You have seen what we have built. You have witnessed the life that endured without you, the love that flourished in your absence, the strength that cannot be diminished by your choices. Now, I want you to understand one more thing." Ethan's chest tightened. His voice came out rough, breaking under the weight of his emotions. "Laura, I don't know what you want me to say. I can't take back the past. I know that. I don't know how to face it." Laura's eyes softened ever so slightly, but her authority did not waver. Facing it doesn't mean begging for forgiveness, Ethan. It doesn't mean pleading or manipulating. Facing it means seeing the truth fully, understanding the impact of your absence, and acknowledging the lives that were shaped without you. And now, you must do it in front of everyone here, because some lessons are witnessed best, not whispered. The guests shifted, sensing the rising tension, leaning in subtly. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides, a mixture of fear, regret, and awe twisting in his chest. I don't know if I can. I wasn't ready for this," he whispered, voice barely audible, but the weight of his admission carried clearly in the heavy silence. Laura took a slow, deliberate step closer, her son walking beside her, his small hand brushing hers for reassurance. "You must, Ethan, not for them, not for appearances, for yourself, and so that you understand that life does not pause for mistakes, for pride, or for absence. Continues, and tonight, it is living proof in front of you." The boy looked up at Ethan, eyes wide, unflinching, as if silently asking him to see what he had missed. Ethan felt a pang so sharp it left him breathless. He had imagined moments of shared pride, teaching and guiding, but now all that existed was the undeniable proof of what he had lost: a child vibrant, kind, and strong, nurtured entirely by a woman who refused to let heartbreak define her. Clarice's voice broke the tense silence, trembling and fragile. "Ethan, this isn't right. We shouldn't let her. She's..." Laura's calm authority cut through her faltering words like steel. "Clarice, it isn't about what is right or wrong for appearances. It's about truth. And truth does not bend for convenience, charm, or status. It exists independently, radiant and undeniable. And tonight, it is here for everyone to witness." Ethan's chest ached with a bitter mix of longing and despair. His voice came out rough, strained, almost a whisper. "Laura, I never understood. I never realized how strong, how incredible you've become. And him, my son." His voice cracked, and for the first time in years, he felt the helplessness of absence fully. I missed everything." Laura's gaze softened just slightly, though her calm authority remained intact. "You did, Ethan, but you cannot undo it. You can only witness it, and perhaps, finally, learn from it." She straightened, looking out over the room as the guests leaned in, their eyes fixed on the tableau before them. "This is a life that endured. This is love that flourished. This is strength that was quietly, unshakably built in the years you chose not to participate. And it stands here tonight for everyone to see." Ethan's fists trembled at his sides, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He had believed wealth, charm, and influence could protect him, could manipulate appearances, could reclaim control, but none of that mattered here. Laura's presence had created an unshakable reality that he could not challenge. He was powerless, exposed, and painfully aware of the life he had abandoned. The boy tugged gently at Laura's hand, and she whispered softly, "Watch carefully. Strength is quiet. Courage does not demand recognition, but life, nurtured with love and integrity, is unstoppable." The child nodded solemnly, embodying the courage and resilience instilled by his mother. Ethan's eyes stayed fixed on them, and a deep, unrelenting ache filled his chest. He had walked away thinking absence could erase him from their lives, but instead, Laura had grown, and their son had grown, and together they had built something radiant, unshakable, and undeniable. The room, once his stage, was now hers, a theater of quiet triumph that neither wealth, charm, nor status could overshadow. Laura's voice softened as she took a deliberate step forward. "Ethan, understand this fully. This is not humiliation. This is life. This is the reality that cannot be denied. And you must witness it, because in witnessing, you finally see what was lost, what endured, and what was nurtured into strength. Nothing else matters. Not charm, not wealth, not pride. Only this." Ethan's throat tightened. "Laura, I see it. I understand. His voice faltered, breaking under the weight of raw emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive myself for walking away, for missing all of this." Laura nodded slightly, the faintest trace of warmth breaking through her calm steel. "You may never forgive yourself, Ethan. That is not my burden to carry. But you can accept the truth. You can witness what strength looks like, and perhaps finally learn to respect it. That is all that matters." The guests remained silent, captivated by the charged energy radiating from the trio. Laura's calm, unyielding presence, and the quiet authority of their son had transformed the evening into a living testament of resilience, love, and strength. Ethan realized fully, painfully, that the life he had abandoned had not only survived, it had thrived, and he had no power to reclaim it. Control were the pillars of influence, but here, they crumbled under the quiet authority of a woman who had endured, survived, and thrived in his absence. "Ethan," Laura said softly, her voice steady, "you are seeing the life we have built. The years you weren't here were not empty. They were filled with lessons, with growth, and with love that never faltered, even when you chose to leave." Her gaze swept the room, calm and unyielding, yet somehow tender. "Tonight, I want you to understand that strength is not loud. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, radiant and unshakable, and it nurtures life in ways you never imagined." Ethan's throat tightened. "Laura, I see it now. I can see what I walked away from, and it's overwhelming. His voice broke, emotion choking the words. "I never realized. Not like this." Laura's eyes softened just a fraction, but the calm authority never wavered. "You never realized because you were absent. You never faced the quiet, patient work it takes to nurture a life, a child, and a love that survives absence and heartbreak. Now you see it, fully and undeniably." She gestured subtly toward their son, who stood confidently beside her. "Look at him, Ethan. He is not just a child. He is a testament to endurance, to love that is not contingent on your presence. He is living proof that life thrives when it is protected, nurtured, and cherished. The boy looked up at Ethan, his eyes steady and unwavering. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. Every imagined interaction, every fantasy of shared fatherhood, collided painfully with reality. He had missed birthdays, first steps, bedtime stories, lessons in patience and empathy. And now, he saw the life he had abandoned in the innocent, strong gaze of his son. Clarice stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Ethan, she can't. It's not appropriate." Laura's calm authority silenced her effortlessly. "Clarice, this isn't about etiquette or appearances. It's about truth. And truth, once revealed, cannot be hidden. It exists independently of charm, wealth, or manipulation. Tonight, you all witness resilience, love, and strength that are not contingent on absence or abandonment." Ethan's hands trembled at his sides. "Laura, I didn't understand. I didn't realize how much you endured, how strong you've become." His voice was a whisper, raw with vulnerability, laden with regret and awe. I missed everything. And now I see it and I can't take back a single moment." Laura crouched, slightly to meet her son's gaze, her hand brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Stand tall, my love. You see what strength looks like. Remember it, learn from it, and always know that courage and love do not need approval. They only need endurance." Ethan's chest ached with the realization of what he had lost. The wealth he had relied upon, the charm he wielded like a weapon, the manipulations he thought could control perception. All of it felt hollow, meaningless, irrelevant in the face of the quiet, unshakable triumph of Laura and their son. Laura straightened, her gaze sweeping the room. "Tonight, you witness a life that endured, a love that flourished, and a strength that could not be diminished by absence, abandonment, or betrayal. These are the consequences of choices, Ethan, yours and mine, and they exist here, in plain sight, undeniable, unshakable." The crowd leaned in, captivated by the subtle but immense energy of the moment. Murmurs ran through the guests, admiration, surprise, curiosity, all carrying the weight of recognition that Laura's calm, quiet power had eclipsed any display of wealth or charm that had previously dominated the evening. Ethan's throat tightened. "Laura, I am powerless. I didn't realize. I see now. I see how much I lost. And what you've built. It's incredible. His voice broke completely, raw with emotion, every word heavy with longing, regret, and awe. Laura's gaze softened just slightly, the faintest trace of warmth in her eyes. "You see it, Ethan. You witness it, and that is all I ask. Accept it, respect it, learn from it, because the truth is stronger than any wealth, deeper than any charm, and enduring beyond any absence. You walked away and we thrived. That is reality. That is life." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, his chest heaving, mind racing with every lost moment, every absence, every regret. He had imagined arguments, confrontations, and manipulations to reclaim some measure of control, but none of it mattered. Laura's quiet authority and the undeniable presence of their son had claimed the room, claimed the narrative, and rendered him powerless to challenge what had been achieved in his absence. Laura extended her hand slightly toward the room, her voice calm and deliberate. "Witness, all of you. This is resilience. This is enduring love. This is strength that cannot be stolen, diminished, or destroyed. And it stands here, in front of your eyes, for everyone to see, unyielding and radiant." Ethan's gaze followed her every movement, heart pounding with awe and regret. He realized fully, irrevocably, that the life he had abandoned had not only survived, it had grown, flourished, and become something far more powerful than he had ever imagined. Laura's triumph was quiet, patient, and unstoppable, leaving him exposed, humbled, and painfully aware of the depth of his loss. The boy tugged gently at her hand, and she whispered softly, "Strength is quiet, courage is steady, and life continues, even when absent. Watch, Ethan. See what you missed, and remember it." Ethan's chest tightened with the raw realization of his mistakes. The wealth, the charm, the power he had relied on, all irrelevant. Laura's quiet, radiant authority, and the life she had nurtured with love and patience had created an unshakable reality, and he was powerless to touch it, only able to witness, feel, and confront the truth of what he had lost. Laura's eyes met Ethan's, steady, unyielding, yet not cruel, simply illuminating the undeniable reality he had long avoided. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft but piercing through the hushed murmurs of the crowd. "Do you see him?" She gestured subtly to their son, who looked up at Ethan with unflinching eyes, calm, confident, and filled with a quiet authority beyond his years. "This is your son, and while you were absent, life continued. Love was nurtured, strength was built, courage was taught, and now he stands here before you, fully realized, whole, and unafraid." Ethan's throat tightened, and his chest ached with the sudden, piercing weight of regret. I never imagined. Not like this." His voice trembled, breaking under the flood of emotions, awe, longing, and the bitter sting of realization. "I didn't know what I walked away from. I missed everything." Laura's gaze softened just slightly, her hand brushing her son's hair as she knelt to his level. "Stand tall, my love. Look at him. See what absence cannot erase. See what love and resilience build. And Ethan, understand fully, not with excuses or charm, but with clarity and truth. Life endures, even when hearts are absent." Ethan's hands shook as he lowered them to his sides. He had always believed he could control situations with wealth, influence, and a carefully curated image. But none of that mattered here. Laura's quiet authority, the boy's steadfast presence, and the living proof of love nurtured in absence left him powerless and exposed. Clarice stepped forward, voice trembling. "Ethan, we can't just..." Laura's calm authority cut through her words like steel. "Clarice, this isn't about appearances or convenience. It's about truth. And the truth cannot be manipulated, cannot be silenced, cannot be hidden behind wealth, charm, or arrogance. Tonight, the truth stands before you all, and you must witness it." The guests leaned in, captivated by the intensity of the moment. Every whisper, every glance, carried the weight of recognition. Laura had transformed the evening into a testament of quiet triumph. Ethan felt a bitter ache twist in his chest as he realized that the stage he had once dominated, the charm and status he had wielded with ease, were meaningless against the undeniable force of truth and resilience. Ethan's voice emerged, rough and strained, trembling under the weight of emotion. "Laura, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I deserve to even be here." Seeing him like this, his eyes filled with unshed tears, mixture of longing, shame, and awe. I walked away, and now I see. Everything I lost, everything I missed." Laura rose slightly, her posture calm yet commanding, and her son mirrored her. "Ethan, you must see it. Not for pride, not for appearances, not for charm or influence. You must see the life that endured in your absence. You must witness the love that flourished despite abandonment. And you must understand that some victories are quiet, invisible to the unobservant eye, yet utterly unshakable." The boy stepped forward, tugging lightly on Laura's hand, and Ethan felt the full impact of his absence. This small child, radiant and strong, embodied everything Ethan had missed: laughter, courage, kindness, and the love that had continued to grow without him. He wanted to speak, to reclaim a place, but the words faltered, choked by emotion he could no longer contain. Laura's gaze swept over the room, calm and unwavering, commanding without aggression. "Tonight, you all witness what resilience looks like. You witness a love that endured, a courage that was nurtured, and a life that was rebuilt despite abandonment. And you, Ethan, must understand fully, not with excuses, but with acceptance. You have lost nothing that is unredeemable, because it is not yours to reclaim. You can only witness and perhaps, finally, respect it. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat as tears threatened to spill. I see it. I understand. I wish I could have been. I wish I could have been part of it. His voice faltered entirely, a raw and unfiltered expression of regret, awe, and heartbreak. Laura crouched slightly, brushing her son's hair and whispering, "Remember, my love, strength is quiet, courage is steady. Life endures, even when hearts are absent." The boy nodded solemnly and looked at Ethan with the clarity of one who has witnessed and understood much already. Ethan's chest tightened further as the truth fully sank in. He had imagined confrontations, imagined arguments, imagined using charm and influence to regain control, but none of that mattered. Laura and their son had claimed the room, claimed the narrative, and claimed the undeniable truth of love and resilience in a way he could not challenge. Laura straightened, extending her gaze across the room. "Witness this, all of you. This is what endurance looks like. This is what love looks like. This is what strength looks like. And it exists independently of absence, betrayal, or arrogance. It stands here, visible, radiant, and unshakable." Ethan's eyes remained fixed on them, heart pounding with awe, regret, and humility. He had walked away thinking absence could erase him, but instead, Laura had nurtured life, and their son had grown radiant, strong, and fearless. He could do nothing but witness it, powerless and painfully aware of all he had lost. The room remained hushed, captivated by the quiet intensity between them. Laura's authority, the boy's calm strength, and the undeniable evidence of years of love and resilience had rendered Ethan exposed, humbled, and fully confronted with the consequences of his absence. Laura's gaze found Ethan's again, unwavering, filled with a mixture of resolve and quiet authority. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Do you realize what you are witnessing? Not just a child, not just a family, not just appearances, but a life that endured in your absence. A love that flourished because it refused to be diminished by abandonment. A strength that grew quietly, patiently, and now stands here, undeniable and radiant." Ethan's throat tightened, and his voice emerged in a hoarse whisper. "Laura, I never imagined. I didn't know it could be like this." His chest heaved, filled with a mix of regret, awe, and the sharp sting of realization. "I walked away, and now, I see what I lost, what I missed. Everything." Laura's eyes softened slightly, yet her presence remained commanding. She gestured toward their son, who stood confidently, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Look at him, Ethan. This child, our son, is not just evidence of life continuing. He is a living testament to love that persevered, to courage that was nurtured, to strength that was built silently, without reliance on charm, wealth, or influence. And he stands before you fully realized, unafraid, undeniable." Ethan felt the tight knot of guilt and longing tighten further in his chest. He had imagined countless scenarios of reconciliation, imagined arguments and negotiations, imagined charm and influence restoring his place, but none of that mattered. Laura's quiet authority, their son's steadfast presence, and the undeniable reality of the life he had abandoned left him powerless and exposed. Clarice stepped forward, trembling and faltering. "Ethan, this isn't, she shouldn't, she can't." Laura's calm authority cut through her words effortlessly. "Clarice, this is not about appearances or convenience. It is about truth. And truth, once revealed, cannot be silenced or hidden. It exists independently, radiant and undeniable. Tonight, you all witness resilience, love, and strength that endured despite abandonment. And Ethan, you must understand this fully, not with excuses, not with charm, not with pride, but with clarity and acceptance." Ethan's hands shook at his sides. "Laura, I see it, I understand. I wish I had been there. I wish I hadn't walked away." His voice faltered, breaking under the weight of raw emotion. He had imagined reclaiming control, rewriting history with charm and influence, but none of it mattered. Laura and their son had claimed the stage, claimed the narrative, and claimed the undeniable truth of love and resilience in a way he could not challenge. Laura stepped closer, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, commanding without raising her voice. "Everyone here, see what endurance looks like. Witness what love can achieve when it is nurtured, protected, and perseveres. Despite absence, this is the result of choices, Ethan, the life you left behind, the love you abandoned, and the strength that was quietly cultivated in your absence. Respect it, witness it, and understand it." The boy tugged lightly at Laura's hand, a silent anchor, a subtle yet powerful reminder of all that Ethan had missed. Laura's voice softened just slightly as she addressed him. "Stand tall, my love. You see what strength looks like. Remember it, and always know that courage does not demand recognition. It simply exists, enduring, steady, unshakable." Ethan's chest ached with a mixture of shame, awe, and longing. He had walked away, thinking absence could erase him from their lives. But Laura's quiet authority and the boy's unwavering presence made him painfully aware of the truth: absence had not erased love. Absence had not destroyed courage, and absence had not diminished strength. All that had grown in his absence was far beyond his influence, his control, or his wealth. Laura's voice carried across the room again, calm yet firm, every word deliberate. "Witness this, all of you. This is what love endures. This is what strength looks like. This is resilience that could not be broken, nurtured and protected through patience, through heartache, through years of quiet devotion. And it stands here tonight, visible and radiant, a reminder that some victories are quiet but absolute." Ethan's heart pounded painfully. The reality of what he had lost, the life he had abandoned, and the unwavering triumph of Laura and their son pressed on him like a physical force. He had no defenses, no charm, no influence that could undo what he now saw. He could only bear witness, powerless, humbled, and acutely aware of the life he had forfeited. The crowd leaned in, silent, captivated by the quiet intensity radiating from the trio. Murmurs had ceased, replaced by a reverent stillness. Laura's calm authority, the boy's composed strength, and the undeniable evidence of love and resilience had transformed the evening into an undeniable testament of triumph over absence, betrayal, and abandonment. Ethan's eyes were fixed on them, his chest heaving, heart breaking, and mind overwhelmed. He had imagined arguments, confrontations, and attempts to manipulate appearances, but none of it mattered. Laura had claimed not just the room, but the narrative itself. Their son was proof of endurance, love, and quiet power. And Ethan, for the first time, fully understood the irrevocable consequences of his choices. Laura took one more deliberate step, her hand brushing her son's hair, whispering softly, "Strength is quiet, courage is steady, and life endures, even when hearts are absent. Watch, Ethan. See what you missed, and carry the truth with you always." She let the silence linger, let it weigh on every heart present, until even the chandeliers seemed to bend beneath it. Then her voice rose, low, deliberate, but filled with such resonance that it felt like a tide crashing over them all. "Ethan," she said, her gaze cutting into him like a blade softened only by compassion's edge. "Do you remember the night you walked away? Do you remember the promises you shattered with a single step out the door?" Ethan's lips trembled, his throat constricting. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked into nothing, just air. Laura didn't wait. Her hand rose slowly, her fingers brushing her chest as if recalling a wound that had never healed. "That night I begged you, not for myself, but for the child you knew was on the way. I asked for love, for patience, for courage. And instead, you chose absence. You chose silence. You chose her." Her eyes flicked briefly toward Clarice, whose face drained of color. "And with that choice, you forfeited the right to stand as anything more than a shadow in our story." Gasps rippled across the room. Ethan staggered a step forward, his voice breaking free. Laura, I was lost. I thought I wanted something else, something easier. But she lifted her hand, silencing him with a single gesture. The authority in her presence was undeniable, regal. No, Ethan, do not fill this moment with excuses. Do not poison this truth with what-ifs and regrets. This is not about what you thought you wanted. This is about what you abandoned. Her son's fingers tightened around hers, and Laura looked down at him with a gentleness that melted into something fiercer. She crouched slightly, her voice soft now, but every word crystal clear to all who listened. Do you remember, sweetheart, how many nights I told you your father was out there, somewhere, that he had made a choice we could not understand? Do you remember how many times I promised you that you were enough, that you were everything, no matter who stood with us or who walked away? The boy nodded, his eyes glassy, his jaw clenched as he fought against the trembling in his small body. Yes, Mama, he whispered, his voice catching. Laura turned back to Ethan, her expression resolute. He is the man you left behind, Ethan. This boy, your son, grew without you. He learned his strength without your hand to guide him. He learned compassion without your words to shape him. And tonight, he stands tall, unafraid, because he knows that love does not depend on those who abandon it. He knows because I showed him, because I had to. Ethan covered his face with his hands, shaking violently. His sobs broke the last veneer of dignity he had carried into the room. Clarice reached out to steady him, but he pulled away, collapsing into himself. Laura straightened slowly, her presence commanding again, her eyes sweeping the crowd. All of you see him now, the man who left, the man who abandoned. And you see us, the family he believed would break in his absence. But we did not break. We rose. We endured. And now, this truth will live in every one of your memories. Because strength, she paused, her eyes blazing, is never born from betrayal. It is born from survival.